Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever, everybody. Welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 229, where we're kind of doing a year in review for 2014. And to, I muted him, I can't unmute him. To join me, I've got Shane on here. Shane, can you unmute yourself on your side?
I can, boss man. Woohoo!
There you go, there you go. I muted him so he wouldn't steal my thunder during the intro, and then I couldn't unmute him. But no, I was just so it's December 29th, 2014 here, and I've been reading the newspaper, watching TV, listening to podcasts, and everybody's doing like years in review, talking about 2014, and I'm like, Shane and I have some dumb ideas about 2014. Everybody else is spreading theirs. We should do ours. So we kind of threw this together at the last minute. There's really no form or anything to it. I'm not even really going to talk much about production notes because I just published last week's thing this morning, so we don't even talk about that. But just Shane and I being in the tech field, just kind of talk about what 2014 meant to us.
It was a very stoic year. Made me very happy. It was. What was the Chinese year? Was it the year of the dragon or the year of, do we know any of that?
The year of the horsefly or something.
Maybe it's a housefly.
Somebody in the chat room looked that up, and don't lie to me when you somebody says it's the year of the turtle or something. I'm not going to believe them.
So what are we going to start with? All the awesome things happened in 2014. What do you want to start with?
Well, so one thing I've noticed about all these year in reviews is they really aren't the year in review. They're really only like the last month or two in review. So one of them that I was listening to was talking about how Ebola was the big story this year. But I have a feeling that like if all that stuff would have happened in March and all of the ALS ice bucket stuff would have happened in October, it wouldn't have been the year of Ebola. It would have been the year of the ice bucket thing. So in that regard, I think this is 2014 will be the year that I got another new cell phone. So I got the Lumia 830. So that's kind of cool. I got this a couple days ago, and so that's what I'll always remember about 2014 was new phone.
And what's the 830? Is it just faster hardware? Is that really your big switching point?
So it's faster hardware. So the last month or so for me with my phone has been very traumatic, marked by many ups and downs. One of the downs being me dropping it and shattering the screen. That was decidedly a down point. But so as the updates have been coming, all the phones get all the updates. So my 920 and my 520 have been, they're on the preview for developers. So they're getting all the new bits. But they seem to be getting slower and slower and slower. And as I switch apps more often, now I'm getting the whole waiting and all that kind of stuff. And so I was kind of getting a little tired of that, kind of wanted to be able to do some of the new stuff. The 830 came out. It's got faster hardware, though not a lot faster, not remarkably faster. It's got a little better camera, so I can't believe this is even going to come up because I know it's going to happen. I've got the hump on the back here for the camera, so it's got a little better glass. Though, of course, it's not as big as...
Are you saying that mine is bigger?
I'm saying that yours is bigger than mine. Yeah, that's where, as soon as that came up, I knew. So Shane's got the 1020. It's got an even better camera. So I've got a better camera on this one. And, both of us, we got little kids. The best camera is always the camera that you have with you, regardless of whatever cameras you have, and that's the duty that this thing holds. So having a better camera definitely helps. But the other thing, and I've been thinking about it because I've had this other phone for year and a half, something like that. Went down to San Antonio a couple weeks ago. Your friend of mine, Jeff DeVerter, had recently gotten the Lumia 830 and just could not shut up about how great it was and kept putting it in my hand and making me touch it and making me play with it. We're still talking about the phone. And so just doing all that kind of stuff, I'm like, man, this is really nice. Lori got one also a couple weeks ago. Talked about how much she liked it. And so, yeah, I finally went out and did it. Now, this is a funny story. So I've been talking about it for a couple of months, getting one of these when they came out. My wife, Jill, and I, we had this fun game we used to play a few years ago where I would spoil every Christmas and every birthday by guessing ahead of time what she had gotten me. Every time. There were many stories. So I have to consciously not pay attention to these clues anymore. Like when Christmas comes up, I just won't even look at her. I'll walk out of the room because I don't want to spoil Christmas. So my phone had been getting slow, and I dropped it, and she'd been telling me for a while, if there's a new phone, go ahead and get it. It's okay, kids don't really need to go to college. It's all right, you can go get the phone. I'm like, nah, I got this other phone. It's working, it's okay. And I was talking to Lori, and she's like, oh, I got this 830. It's great. You should get one. It's the best phone ever. I love it. It's all great. And then all of a sudden, in hindsight, my wife quit telling me to buy this phone, and Lori started saying, there's probably going to be some beginning of the year sales on that phone. You should hold off and see. If you're not sure, you should wait until the beginning. And I had done a good enough job training myself not to pick up on these clues that I completely missed it. So Christmas morning got opened up, that, and it wasn't a lot. As an adult, you don't get a lot of presents. It's cool. It's all about the kids, and that's all good. But I got this phone. So Jill and Lori had been talking about this. It was awesome. But Jill, knowing that I travel a lot, had gotten me the international version of this phone, which doesn't do any of the high-speed AT&T stuff in the States. So it use different frequencies, and every one of the LTE bands that AT&T uses, that phone did not have. So I opened it up. I'm like, yay! Aww.
So close yet so far.
Yeah. So I had to go down to the AT&T store the day after Christmas and pick one up. So. But yeah, it's pretty good. So it's got the wireless charging that I've fallen in love with via the plate here. It also does the step monitoring stuff. So if I use the health app, it'll tell me how many steps I've taken during the day, which is weird because I don't carry my phone with me all the time. So it's not a really accurate depiction of how much work I've done. Yeah. So I mean, like you, I'm still carrying my Fitbit. Yep. The band didn't replace, but no, it's much faster, better screen, a little bit better screen. I'm happy with it so far.
I'm still holding out. They posted some more rumors on the 1030 or the 1040 coming down the pipe. So, and one of the things, right? So you talked about pictures, and the best camera is the one you have with you, and so that's really been since I've gotten the 1020, right? We've taken all of our family photos with it, and so then this year. Because it automatically uploads to SkyDrive, I just shared that whole folder out with Nicole at a SkyDrive. And so when she did like the year-end calendars and all of that stuff, she could actually use my phone pictures. If you've ever tried to use phone pictures for things you print out and stuff, they don't work unless you've got, Superphone.
Yep. So I tried to do that. So one of the fun games that we like to play at the Klindt household is we take a picture of the Christmas card in front of the tree, and it's a very well orchestrated thing. Jill gets it all ready. I'm willing to do it for like one shot. The kids want to do everything possible to not be in the picture, including fight with each other and hit each other with pans and all kinds of stuff. And so it ends up taking forever because we have to take a bunch and like this kid's not looking here and all that kind of stuff. So I thought this is great. I had the same idea you did. I've got a tripod mount for my cell phone. So I've got tripods, put it on the tripod mount, all that, and got some software where I could speak, some software called ReadyClick. So you can turn that on, and then you can say, take a picture, and your camera will count down and then take a picture. So we didn't have to like all try to get in place before the count. So we could get in place. I could yell at my phone. I thought this is perfect because, again, the picture quality is far enough, good enough for this kind of thing. Two problems with that. Number one was with the tree in the background, my phone could not focus on us. If the lights were on the tree, it would always focus in the wrong spot and everything was all fuzzy, which works in my favor, but my kids are fairly cute. My wife's, good looking. So I was a fan of the fuzzy pictures. They were not. The other thing is ReadyClick only works for one picture. So you set it up, you start it, you say, take a picture, and it says 3, 2, 1, say cheese, cheese. Then you got to go up and reactivate it again. So we did not take our family pictures with this because it just didn't work, but I really wanted to.
Yeah, we did. We cheated. We had like family pictures like in October. We did the folly, went to a park and all of that. So we were able to use those pictures. And while that was a pain in the ass, it actually works out better because then you don't have all the Christmas picture pain in the ass. So.
Yeah. But with this time, so I can't remember if I threatened the children with burning all of their presents in front of them, but we did it in one take. It was, so the camera takes like 10 pictures in a row, and we got it, and it was done. And I'm like, well, I'm used to the fighting and the yelling and the me saying I'll never do this again, and where is all that? It doesn't feel like Christmas. It's just it's no fun. But yeah, so and I don't know if I've told you about this. You didn't listen to last week's Netcast, did you?
I meant to, and
too busy with all that not working and all that. So Rob Wins in the chat room correctly points out the name of the software is Ready Click, not Ready Clicks. So that's very insightful. I should have picked up on that.
Oh, I misread it. I thought it said Ready Chicks. I thought it was something completely different.
But so one of the things, and this happens with this phone and my 920, is if you Bluetooth pair your tablet to your phone, so in your case your Surface Pro 3, if you Bluetooth pair it, then your tablet will see like a phantom wireless connection for your phone, and if you click it, it will automatically start the internet sharing on your phone, and then share it out to your tablet. So that's one thing I've been playing with at least a lot lately. And I found out this week, so I've got a Ford Explorer, and it's got all the in-car stuff. It can also trigger that. So my car can be an internet hotspot.
Yep.
And it can tether off of something else. And since it's Bluetooth connected to my phone, if I hit it in there, it will trigger the internet connection sharing on my phone also.
Very nice.
Yes, that's been pretty cool. So the new phone does that. That's worked well.
Well, and so speaking of the Surface Pro 3, right, I think, talking year in review, I think it's got to be the device of the year. I don't know of another, I guess you'd have to, what would you call it? Productivity device of the year? I don't know what the piece would be, the right word there. But
yeah, Microsoft really blurred the line between tablet and laptop. So yeah, I don't know what you would call it, honestly.
But it's phenomenal hardware. I still love everything about it. I can't imagine my life without one.
Oh, jeez, I'm starting to tear up. So which model do you have? Because one I've got the Surface Pro 2, very very happy with it. Like the Surface Pro 2. So when the Surface Pro 3 came out, started thinking about that again. Mortgaging my children's college money. But there's an i3, an i5, and an i7 version, and there's all these. So which one do you have?
I have the i5 8 gigs.
Okay.
Because the i7s didn't come out in the first wave, and
Right.
I had to have it on day one, so I had to get an i5. And with all the Surface Pros that we've bought, because we've had one of each of the generations, we've always went with the 8 gig, just because I don't know, I feel like Windows doesn't really run very well in 4 gigs. So.
Well, I don't think the original Surface Pro had an 8 gig. I think it was only 4. Did it have an 8 gig? Because I had one and it was only the 4 gig option.
I thought it was 8 gig. It's been a while, but.
So I've got the 8 gig Surface Pro 2, and I agree. Windows works in 8 gig. You start opening up Chrome and Internet Explorer though, and it starts struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, are there Surface Pro 3s that have more than 8 gig of RAM?
No, 8 gig is the top. There's 2 different 8 gig flavors. There's an 8 gig 256 gig hard drive and an 8 gig 512 gig hard drive. I went 256 just because, that darn cloud thing, right? I like to store all my stuff out there and our friends in OneDrive, in which.
So that's my Surface Pro 2 is the same. It's 8 gig of RAM, 256 gig of storage, and then I've got a 64 gig SD card in it. And I would have not thought that either of those, the 8 gig of RAM or the 256 gig of storage would be enough. They have been, though it has changed how I move files around and where I download things and all that. So I use the cloud more because I've only got 256 gig of storage, but it's enough. I mean, I can keep music on there. When I travel, I can put movies and stuff on there.
Yeah, I guess I don't have any music on there. I don't have any movies. I got some Word, Excel, and some PowerPoints. Pointy hair manager files, and that's about the only thing I keep on the hard drive.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in airplanes, and I get bored pretty quick. So that's.
Yeah. Well, I used to be, I had the Xbox Music Pass forever, back from when it was the Xbox Zune Pass and all that, and I just got so tired of dealing with their crap that I turned it all off, and now I've been, for probably the last 6 months, I've been using Pandora, and, get some commercials, but, whatever, who cares?
So what kind of crap, because my Xbox Music is coming up here, I need to renew it. What kind of crap did they give you that you didn't
I mean, I think the biggest thing I hated was, because I move devices so often, trying to move those, you get what, I was still in the grandfathered plan where I got 10 MP3s with every month for free.
Right.
And, so downloading those was a pain in the butt. If you did get them downloaded and you moved devices, it was almost about a 50-50 shot whether or not you could get them moved over to the new device without losing the DRM stuff. And I just got aggravated by them all the time.
Yeah, so I only signed up a year ago, so I don't get the 10 free MP3s that you're complaining that you get. I was paying the same amount of money as you and not getting those. but for me, it's been a weird thing. So I was anti-streaming. So I'm an old school guy. I normally listen to albums. You know, I don't put it on random or shuffle or anything like that. I'm like, oh, you know, today feels like a Ted Nugent kind of day, and I'll put on, you know, something. So streaming never really appealed to me. But when I got my Windows Phone here a year and a half ago or whatever, the Xbox Music does a cool thing where if it can find music locally on any of your devices, it lets you stream that from all of your devices. Because I've got a lot of MP3s, so I would copy it onto one, and then they could all stream it. But you couldn't do that on the phone unless you had the Xbox Live. And so I'm like, well, you know, I'll try it. And it has completely changed how I discover music and how I listen to music and how I came around. I understand streaming now, I think. I would not want to give it up.
Well, you know, so interesting. Nicola, when she got her, I think her S4, Verizon was in one of those moods, you know, a cute girl walked in. They gave her, like, I swear to you, $500 in free stuff, right? Chargers and cables. And one of the things they gave her was a Bluetooth speaker, like one of those ones that's, you know, about the size of two baseballs, I guess. And hooking that up to my phone, I've been pretty impressed with that, right? So I can stream Pandora to my phone, hook up the Bluetooth speaker there, and can rock out the house pretty well. So.
Yep, and so that's what led me to this, because I got a little Bluetooth speaker to put in my bathroom for in the shower, and that's what I had hooked up to my phone, but then couldn't get to all my tunes and all that. So yeah, and I got a Bluetooth speaker for us for the house for Christmas for the same kind of thing. It's the technology. I mean, Bluetooth's been around for how long now? And it was one of those things that it never worked. You could never figure out how to use it. I kind of feel like Bluetooth. Yeah, it's coming. I think it's going to be a thing.
10 years in, Bluetooth finally gets Todd seal approval.
It was an uphill fight, but
when I got the wife the Microsoft Arc mouse, the Bluetooth edition for Christmas is one of the things she actually got. I've had one for a while now, and it's pretty handy being able to, you know, sync it with the Surface and not having to use my USB slot for the mouse dongle and such. So, you know, another kudos for Bluetooth there.
I would love a Bluetooth mouse, but there's just not that many of them.
Yeah.
You would think, and I don't know if it's like a licensing thing to license Bluetooth or what, but yeah, there's just not many of them, and I would love one.
Yeah, and I mean, and this one's like $80. I mean, it's a great mouse, but it's like $80. I own two of them now, so clearly it's worth it to me. But
he's got one fewer kidney, but he's got some great mice. I mean, he's just.
Well, unlike you, I'm not worried about mortgaging my kid's college future, right? I got a new Mercedes out there, too. Hell with those kids.
Screw those guys. I paid for my college, they can pay for yours.
Exactly.
So back to the Surface Pro 3. So they've had some weird issues with those. Like there were some wireless issues and some battery life issues. Are yours impacted, or have you avoided all that?
I don't have a complaint in the world about it. I have not ran into any of that stuff. The wireless, I mean, I saw the patches come for that stuff, and I'm like, okay, it works exactly the same as it did before. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the one thing that's worth noting with mine is it spends probably 90% of its life hooked up to that pluggable USB 3 docking station. So
yeah.
I don't use the wireless a whole bunch, but when I do, it seems to work.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So my Surface Pro 2 is my desktop box. It spends most of its time plugged into this dock, and then when I travel, that's the only time I ever take it. But it is awesome having everything, all my stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's so that pluggable device. I should have some stock in their company. I think I've sold about 10 of them now. Every time somebody gets a Surface, I'm like, yeah, you could buy the crappy docking station Microsoft sales you.
Yep.
Or you can get this one.
Yep. So I make short URLs for all the well, not all of it, but most of the stuff that I talk about here, because the regular URLs are really long. So I've got some links to the pluggable stuff, and it's amazing how many clicks that's gotten. So I hope they're selling lots of those and making lots of money, because they make good products.
Yeah, and apparently it's the guts, so it's all just really display link stuff. So they're really just piggybacking off of another good product, which is the best way to build yourself a good product.
Yeah, I was trying to think if I can find how many links some of those have had, because I've got some blog posts on them. see if I can get those numbers. I can't get it. But yeah, it's been great. I wish the display link video was a little better, but after I did the thing that you talked about, we're switching it with the mini display port, no problems.
Yeah. So there you go. We've named a de facto device of the year, the Surface Pro 3.
Yep. So trying to think of so the other thing that we've got in the notes here is Windows 10. So the Windows 10 preview came out this year, started out this year, and I think the fact they're calling it Windows 10 as opposed to Windows 9 or Windows 8.2 or whatever shows Microsoft's desire to distance themselves from Windows 8.1, which I feel bad. I think Windows 8 is universally looked at as a failure, but I think that's not fair. I think it's not a failure anymore.
I like Windows 8. I don't know what to tell.
I do too, and so there were kind of two things that changed my view on it. So when Windows 8 first came out, and for you and I, our first exposure to Windows 8 was probably Windows Server 2012. It was, SharePoint and all that. Horrible, hated it. I would not install Windows 8 on anything. I refused. And I remember at SP TechCon a couple years ago, Sean McDonough had his laptop there, and he had Windows 8 on it. We were all making fun of him, and nothing would work, and all that. It was horrible. But I think two things changed my mind on it. The first is Windows 8.1. When that came out, that fixed a lot of the problems that Windows 8 had. And number two was at TechEd, 2 TechEds ago, when they sold the Surfaces and the Surface Pros cheap, getting a touch device that helped me understand what Microsoft was trying to do with Windows 8. I didn't agree with it, but I understood it, and that helped a lot.
Yeah, well, and you just alluded to the fact that they skipped from Windows 8 to Windows 10. Did you read the articles that talked about it? They actually ended up doing that because of a bunch of poorly written code.
So everything that I've seen about that was speculation. It was, somebody at, Smith Publishing Company saying, I bet this is why. I don't think I ever saw anybody with a blue badge say, we sat down and looked into the problem, and I think this would have been an issue.
Yeah. I don't think they're ever going to admit anything like that, right? They're not going to call out the poorly written code of all of their partners, but...
Yeah, and for those of you that don't follow this stuff, what Shane's talking about was, and again, and if there's developers, there's a few in the chat room maybe, but when developers write programs, they want to make sure that it runs on the OS that it's being installed on, and there's various ways to check that. And the speculation was that Microsoft skipped Windows 9 because they were afraid that developers who wrote code 15 years ago, when checking for the Windows version, did something like, if Windows version is Windows 9 asterisk, thinking Windows 95 or Windows 98, then it would assume one thing or the other. And they were afraid that if they called the next version of Windows, Windows 9, that it would trigger that, and the software would think it was running on Windows 95 or Windows 98. It makes for a good story, but I don't know that developers actually do that, because inside of Windows, and it's been this way since Windows 3 something, if you type VER, it gives you the version number, which is 6 dot something, whatever, 7 dot something, and that seems like that would be the thing that they would use. Like, I don't know of a thing that I can type at a command prompt or a way through the API to get Windows 9, 5, or Windows, I don't know.
Yeah, but you're not a boneheaded developer. I mean, this takes one little snippet of code out there. They all cut and paste. That's how they all write. And
Yep. So I don't know. I will say one thing. So I can't remember where I was going. So I was going over to Stockholm. That's right. And on the way over, so this is another we're living in the future sort of thing. My flight from Minneapolis to Amsterdam had internet access the whole way. So I've been on plenty of flights over the land that had internet access, but this was over the ocean, because there's a big body of water between Minneapolis and Amsterdam. You might have heard of it, little Atlantic Ocean thing. Had internet access the whole time, and so I used that to keep myself occupied. And while I was on that flight, somebody leaked some pages from TechNet that went live that weren't supposed to, or something, that supposedly had the new name for what the new version of the operating system was going to be. And it was something stupid, like Windows TP or Windows PT or something like that, just some really crazy thing. And it was like screenshots of TechNet. I mean, it looked legit. But then they had the announcement, 2 days later, and they came out with Windows 10. So everybody thought they knew what it was going to be. It was going to be this ridiculous thing, and it ended up being a completely different ridiculous thing.
It's the key was it was a ridiculous thing. I think that's the key.
Yeah. But I don't currently have Windows 10 on a device right now because I've recycled a couple of things. I'm kind of afraid to put it on my Surface because it is my daily driver, and because the Surface feels scary uh, to do that. Because there's the firmware. I mean, Microsoft owns that experience front to back, and I'm a little nervous. But uh, I used it for a while, and I really liked it. I mean, there wasn't big changes. Most of the changes that showed up in the first few previews were towards desktop users, so it had the start menu, that kind of stuff. Seemed pretty good. I mean, I was a fan.
See, I've gotten lazy. I haven't installed Windows 10 on anything yet. I've just gotten lazy. I don't know how to put it.
Well, I think, you and I are getting old, and we're kind of at that stage where sometimes we just want stuff to work. We don't want to tinker anymore.
I know. I mean, how am I supposed to be a pointy-haired manager in my meetings if I've got some device? I can't be like, nope, this meeting's got to stop. You guys don't get performance reviews because my laptop needs to be rebooted 7 times.
It didn't have many of those problems. I was surprisingly good. So I need to get that back on something because they've updated it a couple times. Now they're going to have a big event on the 21st of January out in San Francisco. I think there's going to be a new build that comes out for that. There'll be some more information.
Do you get a private invite, being the big celebrity that you are?
Well, you would think so. Plus, that's my birthday, so you would think they would throw me a bone. But you and I are going to be in San Antonio that day, hanging out. So
That's right.
I would have had to decline just the same. So they probably knew that. We talk and.
Their people talk to your people, and they decided you shouldn't know anything about it.
Exactly. But Windows 10, I think the last I've heard is we're looking at like a fall or summer release for RTM for that. And I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up in there, I was going to take the segue, and then you just kept rambling right through my segue. But speaking of the year in review again, right? We had all this crazy hacking this year. We've always had it, right? We've had some high-profile ones. Something about a movie that no one really cared about, but the Xbox Live and the PlayStation Network, those being down on Christmas because the year in review is all about right now.
Yes.
That was a big deal.
Yeah. So I know Lori, she got her kids, I think, an Xbox One, or the kids got an Xbox One and couldn't get logged in. A bunch of people had those kind of problems. So that's an interesting thing. And I saw one of the guys from Ars Technica, Dr. Pizza, was talking about that today on Twitter. Is a denial of service attack really hacking? Is it a security thing? Because I think that's what they boiled down to, that it was a DDoS.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, and I don't, the damn script kiddies these days, right? I mean, you can go down and download a script to do a denial of service against just about anyone. It's just about, how much you're willing to pay for that said script and to use someone else's bot network. So I'm with you. I don't really think it's hacking anymore, but.
No, it's so that's an interesting thing. This is a story I can't even believe. You know how sometimes somebody realizes something, like you try to convince somebody something and then they finally believe it and you're just surprised that it actually worked. I had one of those experiences this week. My mom sent me an email. Now my mom has been on email forever, but she's always had that youthful naivety. She just believes everything she reads on the internet and all that. So she was one of those people that would always forward every email that she ever got that said forwarded it and all that. But last week, I must have, over the years, gotten through to her. She sent me this email that someone had forwarded to her that said forward everybody, and asked me, is it real, before she sent it to everybody, which is, I couldn't have asked for. I was so proud. But it was an email, if you get an email with a subject line, whatever, do not open it. It's going to erase your hard drive and shave your dog. And I saw this on CNN, and it's the worst virus ever. I looked it up on Snopes, and they confirmed it. Snopes did not confirm it. But it was this thing, and so she's like, is this real? And so I looked at him like, for one thing, Mom, I'm so proud of you. I could just, I can't believe how proud I am. But so I said, well, for one thing, if you ever get an email that says forward this to everybody, it's bogus. Don't forward it to everybody. But I told her, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, yes, hackers did things like erase your hard drive. That was the thing. They did it for the laughs. They did it for the lulls. But these days, it's all about what you said. It's all about creating these botnets. It's all about, getting a process running on every desktop you can in America, so that when you want to tape down PlayStation or Sony or whatever, you've got all these zombie machines. And so I told her, I'm like, these days, if you get a virus, the virus is going to do everything it can to not let you know that it's there, because somebody wants to sell that.
Yeah, It's interesting. Well, I think the other interesting virus that I've seen on a few people's machines this year are the ones that pop up as antivirus scanners, right? And they lock your hard drive until you give them $20 to use their antivirus scanner to remove the virus they put in, and you
Yeah, the
just
crypto
oh,
locker Inc. was the big one. I don't remember if that was in 2014 or 2013, but that was one of the big ones. So whenever I hear anybody talk about that, it's like, is this a good time to talk about backup software? Is now too soon? Is this so?
yeah.
But that was big. So the hacking thing. So we would be remiss if we didn't talk about kind of the big hacking story, which is Sony. So a couple of funny things about that. Obviously, Sony got hacked hard. I mean, just hackers that when you hear some of the details about this, you get the impression that the hackers like broke into Sony and did some bad stuff and then did some more bad stuff and then did some more bad stuff and kind of got bored and then started deleting stuff. I mean, like they just had their way with Sony so much that they ran out of stuff to do. Um, but when it first came out, like if you would go into Google or Bing and type Sony hack, and the search engine would start doing the autocomplete, it would be like Sony hack 2011, Sony hack 2013, Sony hack 2014. It's like, oh my God. But obviously Sony's a big company. This was Sony Pictures. The previous ones were like PlayStation Network, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think your point about they got in and just did whatever the hell they wanted. They got bored. They did something else, and then they shaved somebody's cat just because they could is exactly right. And I think, it's interesting the people that are like, well, why didn't they have a better firewall? And it's when a state actor like that, assuming it was the state actor, when someone like that goes after you with, an army of people who do this for a full-time job, I mean, it's just short of taking all your computers, unplugging them, burying them 30 feet in the ground, and then covering it in cement, you can't. It's unprotectable. I got really annoyed with some of the people that just rambled on about, oh, why couldn't Sony install the firewall patches and they would have been fine. I'm like, if you honestly think that a firewall patch was going to stop, I can't have this conversation anymore.
Yeah, I'm of two minds on that. So Sony, obviously, in hindsight, there was a bunch of stuff they did bad. Like they apparently had a shared drive that had a folder called passwords that had a bunch of documents in it with the word password in the document that surprisingly had passwords in it. I mean, so yeah, that's probably not a security best practice. But I know this much about security. I mean, I think I know this much, but in reality, I know this much. But one of the things about security, and this is any security, is all security ever does is make you a harder target. So to your point, if somebody's dedicated enough and they're going to get in, and they want to get in, they might get in. But the problem is Sony didn't make themselves a very hard target. They were a very easy target. And so so thinking about that, I lock my door, to my house, even though I live in the quiet, sleepy community of Ames, Iowa. I lock my doors. That just makes me a harder target. If somebody really wants to get into my house, they're going to kick the door frame open, they're going to bust a window, but it makes me a harder target. And Sony was not a hard target at all.
See, and I don't know if I agree with it. They were a hard target. I think that, obviously things like a file share with where it's a bunch of passwords in it is pretty freaking stupid, but that didn't let anyone in, right? That was kind of like leaving all your money laying out on the counter when they got in the house instead of, having it hidden underneath your dresser drawer. That's not where my money's hidden. Don't you people go looking. But I mean, so I think they exposed some really stupid stuff. But I mean, getting in, I'm guessing from the outside, getting in that first time was pretty well protected. I can't imagine that they're like, oh yeah, we got a Cisco firewall here with 2 patches ago.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything that talked about the ingress. I don't know how the initial foothold was taken, so I haven't seen anything with that. Clearly, Sony made some people angry. And the other thing about Sony is they've got like a history of making people angry. But again, Sony's a big company. They've got the electronics division. They've got games, and they've got U.S. and Asia and all that. But Sony was the people who did the rootkit thing. 10 or 15 years ago, I got hit by that. One of the CDs that had that rootkit was a Foo Fighters CD that I bought for my wife. So, and for those of you that probably don't remember that, you put the CD in, it silently installed a rootkit on your Windows PC that would prevent you from ripping the CD. And then it left a rootkit on your CD or on your computer that Sony could use to install their software, but so could anybody. Anybody who knew it was there could install stuff inside of that rootkit. So that was pretty. So they made a lot of people mad with that. PlayStation Network has made some people mad, but then this whole movie, The Interview, where they have a movie about trying to kill a head of state, is that made some people mad. Now that's a funny thing because I guess if I put the shoe on the other foot, if some other country made a movie about assassinating our president and did it in a very glorious fashion, I would think the United States would get pissed, and I guess I can't blame the other countries for getting mad about that.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting conundrum. So I think one of the most interesting parts about it though has been all the leaked emails. I think it's been fascinating, all the stories that have been in people's email boxes.
Yeah, so that leads me to another hacking story. Well, so we'll talk about the email thing first. So some of the more horrible, egregious things. Well, so first there was things like emails between executives at Sony talking about how Angelina Jolie is untalented and she's tough to work with and things like that. Yeah, she doesn't care if they think that, and I don't care if she is that. I mean, so that's pretty. But then there were some really horrible emails. Executives at Sony talking about the president, making some incredibly off-color, terrible jokes about the president. So one of the emails talked about how so the Denzel Washington movie, the Equalizer, just came out. Good movie, watched it, liked it, big fan of Denzel's work. And I guess one thing I learned from there is never piss Denzel Washington off in a Home Depot. That's a good lesson there. The final scene is just graphic and bloody. But there was a series of emails between some higher up folks at Sony saying, "Hey, we should make a sequel for this." And one of the other guys going, "Nah, the foreign markets just don't like black folks. We can't make a movie. It's just not going to work. It's not. The foreign markets aren't." I mean, all these horrible emails. And that. So I'm going to bring it back to this other hacking thing, but I've seen some people suggest that maybe this whole hacking thing was just marketing for the interview, that the interview was going to bomb, and so they made up this whole thing. Given some of the emails that have come out, I'm not buying it. That movie cost them $40 million to make. There is no way that they would get this kind of bad will.
Yeah, that was my someone tried to have that argument with me as well, as this was all just a giant marketing ploy. And like, if you've read any of the stuff, and actually one of the things I posted on my Facebook, got a lot of traffic, was in all those emails that people have been reading. I guess somebody's sitting around just reading every email that's been released line by line, but talking about how they're trying to reintroduce the internet censorship stuff again. And Sony's leading the charge with that, and they got their lawyers, trying to fire up a SOPA style thing. And I think that's really interesting to see that those dirty bastards are at it again. We knew they were, but here's physical proof that they are actively lobbying for it behind our backs.
Yeah, and there was financial information leaked, social security numbers. I mean, just all kinds of, people's home phone numbers, cell phone numbers. So yeah, this was not a marketing thing. Now they may have tried to make lemonade out of it by, spinning it that way, but there's no way. But after I heard the email stuff, it reminded me of something that happened earlier. So earlier in the year, there was the big iCloud hack, and I don't remember how long ago it was, 4 months ago, something like that. And that was that issue where somebody released onto one of those, mega upload or something, a big encrypted archive of a bunch of pictures from celebrity cell phones. So, Jennifer Lawrence and a bunch of these folks. And it was any variety of inappropriate things, nude pictures, things like that. And one of the very first things that people said was, well, they deserve it because they shouldn't be putting this kind of stuff in the cloud. So, if they have this kind of content, they shouldn't put it in the cloud. I can see their point, but then you look back at this email thing. Everything is vulnerable. Everything, whether it's pictures in iCloud, whether it's emails that you send to a coworker the next office over, you shouldn't do anything ever. I mean, if that's the way you're going to look at it, because everything is vulnerable to somebody with enough motivation to get in there. But you don't hear anybody saying that about these executives because it's not, yeah.
Yeah, and I think for the celebrities, the worst part of that was all those photos were released without the photoshopping, right? I mean, you saw the story, right, about like Kim Kardashian photoshopping her selfies before she would release them. So, that was probably what they were most upset about, was they didn't get a chance to Photoshop them first.
Yeah. So it's interesting the different ways that people look at that. And when all this, and I can't remember which one it was, but when all this came out, I was talking to somebody and I'm like, I wonder if, because like even in the chat room, people are saying, well, now that this has happened, have you changed your, so Dan Point asks, have you changed your security stuff because of this? Has this made you more aware of security? And I think to a little bit it has, but there's so much of this happening. So these two big hacks, how many credit card places, Home Depot got hacked and Target got hacked, and credit cards are just flying everywhere in the ether. I'm wondering if it's not going to have the other reaction, like people are just going to get numb to it and they're just going to say, oh, it's the way of life. I was talking to one of my coworkers when I was in San Antonio about this, and he's like, I've just come to terms with the fact that every 6 months or so I'm going to get a new debit card number, and that's just the way that it is. Instead of getting angry about the lax security and all that kind of stuff, we're just going to move to acceptance. It's just,
Yeah, I mean, I think we are. I mean, I'll be honest. I think I'm mostly numb to it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. My credit card numbers, social security numbers, all those things, they cost pennies on the internet at this point to buy. So, I mean, everyone's got 12 copies of it. Whatever, go do something bad with it, and I'll move on. I don't know.
Yeah. So, is that a bad thing? I don't know. Haven't.
Well, I think the problem would be so say that you were freaked out about all this, right? Oh my God. What would you really do? I mean, the only real answer to it would be to stop using the internet. Stop using credit cards, stop using the internet, stop using your cell phone. Just be to completely go off the grid. And I have no desire to live in a cabin in Montana, until I shoot myself. So just not going to do it.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I know some people like that. Like part of the. So this is a great thing. When I bought this Windows Phone, this 830, when I was at the AT&T store, the lady that works there, bless her heart, she's like, those Windows phones are great, but our software for moving contacts and all that stuff over to new phones doesn't work with Windows Phone. So we're not going to be able to move all your stuff over. I'm like, well, I'm fairly computer literate. I think I got this one. I'm not too worried about that. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, but I'm like, and I said, but everything's in the cloud. It's all in OneDrive. It's all whatever. So I'm going to log in. I'm going to give it my password a couple of times. Though I was annoyed by how many Microsoft apps on Windows Phone don't store the password in the cloud and all this. But anyway, but it's all in the cloud, so I don't have to worry about it. And yeah, but I know people that don't do that because of security issues. But I'm with you at the convenience is worth the risk at this point, because it was, so I got it there, it got it connected to the phone, started the restore, jumped to my car. 10 minutes later, I mean, before I was almost even out of town, my phone had the right background, my emails were there, it was all there. And
yeah.
That's even without AT&T's help with their.
Yeah, you wonder, what the hell do they do for people these days? I mean, you transfer contacts, I don't understand what that means. I mean, it's in my account. When I log in, it'll just still be there again.
Yeah, I assume iPhone has something like that. Yeah, I don't even know. So I'm like, yeah, it's all in the cloud. I don't even care. Don't worry about it.
Well, and I will say, in Windows Phone's defense, you point out you had to put in the password over and over again for all the different apps. Someone just rebuilt their iPhone 6 and same deal, right? All their apps came back, but they had to put in all the passwords again. So I think that's the vendor's decision.
Right. So were those Apple apps that they had to do that with?
I didn't care enough to listen.
Yeah. So in my story, there was kind of two classes of apps. There was like, Joe Snuffy's app that I downloaded from the App Store that doesn't take advantage of the API to store stuff in the cloud. Joe Snuffy's an idiot. He should do that, and hopefully he will fix it. But the other one was like the Microsoft Health and Fitness app. It's from Microsoft. They should do this. And there was 2 or 3 Microsoft apps that I had to put my password in. And again, my Microsoft account has a really long, nasty password so that the bad guys don't get in. Typing it on the phone while I'm driving down the road, driving home, jamming out to Christmas tunes was probably kind of tough. So those apps I'm a little less forgiving. The Microsoft app should do it.
Well, I guess, I would ask, and I have no idea, right? We've never had this conversation before, but I wonder if it's a damn DOJ, this group can't use that API versus this group can type of stuff.
I don't know. And the other thing that I thought about was if there was such a situation where I wanted my phone to be under one Microsoft account, but individual apps be under a second one, because like I know you've got a couple of MSN accounts, so there might be some of that going on. But in that case, there should be a button use my phone's identity or put a new one in.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you that it should just work, but I'm wondering if there's some lawyer somewhere's decided it's not allowed to work.
Yeah, that DOJ thing. 15 years later, we're still
complaining.
Still suffering about that. So speaking of that a little bit, another thing that happened here in 2014 was Steve Ballmer stepped down.
Yeah, that was as a technologist and a guy who loves Microsoft, it's very sad to see him go. I was always very happy with him, always liked him a lot. But as a stockholder, I've been thrilled with him leaving. So,
so I'm looking at this graph here that when Ballmer announced, so you've been whining that the Microsoft stock has been in the upper 20s forever. Years and years and years. So Ballmer announced in 2013 that he was going to resign, and the stock immediately started going up, and it was up over a little over $30. And then when Satya Nadella took office, it was up at 35, and the last one we have here is 47. So damn near doubled.
I know. That's why I don't worry about my kids' college fund right there.
So I'm with you. So I think you and I have both had the opportunity to see Bill Gates speak in person.
Yes.
And Steve Ballmer. And then I got to see Satya Nadella at the last MVP summit. I was really impressed with Bill Gates, obviously, right? I mean, it's Bill Gates, for God's sakes. Ballmer, I was unexpectedly impressed with him. He was every bit of a goofball and ridiculously energetic and all that I'd known that he would be. But he had passion, and he didn't take himself too seriously. Like he was a goofball, and he embraced it. He didn't care. And I gained a lot of respect seeing him in person. Satya Nadella was okay. Didn't grab me at all.
Yeah, see, I'm with you. Ballmer's passion was one of those things that just really tugged at my heartstrings. The guy wore it on his sleeve, right? This is who I am. I'm running the company this way. Go to hell. This is what I'm doing as long as I'm the boss. And as a guy who ran his own company in that same style, kind of liked it.
Yeah, and I think the market. I mean, the market's just a big popularity thing. I mean, it's like high school all over again. Under Ballmer, Microsoft posted record profits, record revenues, and that's in spite of things like Windows Vista coming out, and in spite of all this, and he still did all these great objective things, measurable things, and the market's like, Ballmer sucks, and I felt like he never got a fair shake.
Yeah. Speaking of popularity contests, now I'm looking at stocks randomly. Whenever you talk, I'm looking over here at stocks. But Facebook is over $80. When did that happen? I mean, clearly looking at the 5-year chart, it's happened slow and steady, but I got no words for that.
Yeah, it must have been that marketing, that documentary, The Social Network that they put out that told that must be the thing that did it.
That was a great movie.
It was. It was funny. So Zuckerberg was talking about that. I saw an interview with him on 60 Minutes or something. He's like, it was not horribly flattering, but I had to embrace it. So like at the Palo Alto office, apparently like he took a bunch of Facebook folks to the premiere of the movie.
Wow.
He was. It wasn't exactly a hatchet piece, but it didn't make him look the best. But when he came out, he's like, it's mostly a work of fiction. He's like, it's mostly all made up, but they nailed my clothes perfectly. He's like, I'm pretty sure I owned every one of those shirts. So they got that perfect. Well, yeah.
Well, so random story of 2014 talked about the fact, that him wearing the same clothes all the time and how it cuts down the number of decisions he has to make in a day. And I don't know. I only bring that up because I think that's a fascinating concept and explains a lot of the quirks that I have around lack of fashion.
Why you're such a horrible dresser and wear the same Mountain Dew shirt all the time?
Yeah. Hey, I gave up Mountain Dew, and I have not had a Mountain Dew all of 2014.
So I did not have soda all of 2014 either.
And I was having an argument with someone about this recently because, I gave it up for mostly one reason. Yeah. Really, as I thought, hey, if I give it up, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, right? That's always been the promise. That stuff is so bad for you. It's making you fat. So I gave it up, and I drank nothing but water for months. You know what? How much weight I gained? I mean, lost. Gained, because I gained like 1.5 pounds.
But your hair is much shinier now. Your skin glows.
Yeah, well, your skin was glowing until you. But so I found it interesting that I didn't get all of the instant weight loss type of stuff out of it, and I really miss it. And I've switched. You probably noticed I'm drinking out of McDonald's cup. I'm drinking a sweet tea on a pretty regular basis, but no, I haven't had a Coke or Mountain Dew or any of that, and I can't tell a damn difference.
Yeah, so I think we might have quit about the same time. So it was like the fourth quarter of 2013
Yep.
when we both quit. Again, it was a health thing at Rackspace that we both did, and we both thought it was going to be this instant, easy. It turns out there are very few easy weight loss things. But I quit cold turkey, so it's been like since September 30th of 2013 since I've had soda. I find that I crave it constantly. I bet for the first year, so up until just a couple of months ago, I would crave it every single day. I got out of the habit stage because, like, especially you and I, we're big into habits. So we go to eat at the same places, get the same things, and so getting a Mountain Dew with whatever is just part of the process. It's one less thing we have to think about. And so getting out of that habit, that was painful. That took a couple of months, but that finally broke free. But then for months later, I mean, I just craved it constantly, and that's started to subside. Now I just crave it most of the time instead of all of the time. But I've moved to unsweetened tea. I didn't grow up in the South, so I've switched to unsweetened tea.
Yeah, I'm with you. Going to the restaurants, right? It's like Skyline, the Skyline chili around here. You order Skyline with Mountain Dew. It's just one of the upsides, and so it was definitely different having to change. I would tell you that for the most part, my daily desire to have one is gone. What was funny though was like, so I was at the in-laws for a few days for Christmas, all that stuff. Being there, being out of my normal routine, man, I wanted a Mountain Dew. I needed that to kind of center me, right? I didn't have it. So that was one of the few times recently I've really needed one. But other than that, I mean, I will tell you though, I guess the only upside to it all is I feel like I sleep better. I feel like that I go to sleep a lot faster at night. I was one of those people that would take an hour plus to go to sleep on any given night. And since I've given up Mountain Dew, I can honestly say that I go to sleep a lot faster.
So I discovered that 10 or 12 years ago. So I would never let myself have a caffeinated beverage after like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and that helps. So funny story about that. I used to sleep so lightly. At our old house, I had and this was like 1998, had a flip phone and had it on vibrate, and it was in our kitchen. And at like 4 o'clock in the morning, one of our email servers went down. And so it was on the far corner of the house from our bedroom and a floor below. So almost as far away from me physically in that house as it could get. And they called my number and it was on vibrate. And the sound of that phone shaking on the counter woke me up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, 30 feet away and a floor away, because that's how lightly I slept. That would never happen now. That would never wake me up.
Yeah, well nowadays you put those earplugs in and you'll sleep through just about anything, as I can attest to.
I don't know what you're talking. Is that what? Is that? But yeah, so I discovered that about the caffeine also. So I don't do caffeine afternoon or anything like that. Um, but yeah, so I'm with you. But I also feel like if I started drinking it again, I would put on 20 pounds probably overnight. And I feel, we're not young men anymore.
Well, unlike you've had some luck losing some weight, right? I mean, this is completely not important to the technology year in review, but you've had
No.
some luck this year.
Yeah, well, from whenever that moment that we did the weight thing in 2013 till now, I'm down 20 pounds, something like that, and it's a combination of the soda and just other things like we've talked about before. Losing weight is not complicated. You eat less crap, and be more active. I mean, that's all. So it's just, however, for me, it's the key for me is just eating less and eating less crap. So depending on how serious I am about it, that's what I do.
I love candy. And I totally get the whole like carbs free thing is the way to go to lose some weight, but I love carbs. I love bread. I love sugar. I think I'd rather. I can't imagine a life without carbs.
just make an acceptance of being fat. We got nice wives. We got nothing to.
Yeah, it's not a few more years before she can leave me, right? Um, let's see. So, what else? Rear and review.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the Skype translate stuff.
Mm.
And I've talked about that over, when they first announced it, and then here a couple of weeks ago. But this idea that in the Skype client, and they're previewing it now, though I'm not. Apparently, they're only previewing Spanish, but it will do live translations when you're doing Skype calls with people. That's another one of those things that feels like we're living in the future. That is just amazing.
Yeah, it's I haven't used any of it. I don't know anyone that speaks Spanish fluently enough to mess around with it, but it, it is. It's pretty crazy if you think about it. Well, really, so I was talking about Skype and feeling like you live in the future. You remember, being a kid and thinking, man, one day they'll have video phones where you can see people, and we really never got video phones, but because we just kind of magically switched one day from phones to Skype and such, we kind of did, and we can, right? I mean, you and I, you're in Iowa, wherever the hell that is. I'm in Cincinnati. Yet we're having this conversation. There's people from the UK and Canada and Alabama watching us, and where's Rackley from again? I don't even know.
I'm
Arkansas.
not even sure if he's a real person, honestly.
Say bacon 3 times and he appears. But I mean, but it's interesting, right? So we got video phones without ever actually without getting video phones. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about that is we had the technology for video phones, like in the 60s, but we didn't have the demand for it. I mean, nobody wanted the other person to see them when they were on the phone. That was just.
Yeah, well, and I mean, and to this day, right? So in that cabinet right there, I have a meeting shirt. So when I wear, my I hate my job T-shirt, I have to have a call with the CEO, right? I put on my meeting collared shirt and hop right in. I mean, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of cases you don't want to be seen.
Yeah. So one of the things, so being a remote worker, Rackspace, a great company, and their heart's in the right place, but they've never really handled remote workers very well. It's a new thing for them. They're used to everybody being in the castle, and so for the longest time, when I would join meetings, it'd always just be phone bridges. I would call whatever phone that everybody else in the meeting was in. So I would walk around my house. I would walk around the yard. I'd get steps on my Fitbit, and it worked out pretty well. I could pay half attention, and it worked out. But here in the last 6 months, 8 months, they've introduced some new video conferencing stuff, and now everything's going to video conferences, which is great from a productive standpoint. I know people better, and we communicate better, but I sort of miss being able to screw around during meetings, and I think that was the thing. Nobody really wanted video calls.
Yeah, it is interesting, And so speaking of phones in Rackspace here, I won't point the camera; it makes people seasick. But I actually got rid of my desk phone. I turned it in. I'm like, I've not used this in 6 months. I turned in my Avaya desk phone. I've got this because I have all my calls with this, or the cell phone if I absolutely have to get on a call. But I just don't do it.
Yeah, so I never had one. They never shipped me one. So I had the soft phone stuff. I never used it. Same, I just always was ever cell phone or this. But but the translate stuff is amazing. I just and I've read little bits and pieces about it, and it's not as automatic, I guess, as I had thought that it was. It's very much a learning thing. They very much are taking language snippets and figuring out how people use words, because language is an evolving thing and it's a very fluid thing, and so it's very much a learning thing, and that's what this preview is figuring out what people mean when they say things in Spanish and what it means in English. And
yeah, well, and that's you brought up Bill Gates earlier, right? But back in the '80s, he really started down this road of being able to talk to your computers and things like that, right? He understood this is where he wanted to get, and so it took 30 years almost to get to having something like this in beta. Or our friend Cortana, which is just the most amazing thing on the planet. Talking to her, and it's been a long investment, and I'm guessing that now as it's starting to hit, right, we're going to start just seeing crazy iterations.
Yeah, I was one of the, and this will come as no surprise to you, Shane, one of the podcasts that I listen to is Grammar Girl.
I wish you all could appreciate how hard I just rolled my eyes.
So I just listened to a Grammar Girl podcast today about hyperbole and how our brain interprets when we use hyperbole, and she was talking about how some folks at MIT actually figured out like a formula for taking people who are using hyperbole in sentences and figuring out from the text whether it's hyperbole or not. They've actually broken it down into a formula, and but it's all part of this whole translating thing. So, when somebody says, I saw this the example she gives is like a frozen snow globe. I found this frozen snow globe that everybody's been looking for at the toy stores. And she says, well, how much was it? And she's like, well, if I say it was $43, well, how much do you think it is? I think it's $43, right? That's a very sharp, very specific number. It's $43. But if I say, that thing was $1 million, obviously you don't think it's $1 million. That's a round number, and it's very far from the actual value. But so then they kind of broke it down from the translation bit. What does that mean when you translate it? Well, if I say it's $43, that's just factual. That's just boring. There's nothing there. But if I'm using this hyperbole, it relays a bunch of things. It relays the fact that I think it's overpriced. It relays the fact that I'm flabbergasted that it's overpriced, and it kind of relays the fact that you and I have sort of a relationship. We've got some, it's not stale. It's a friendly way of doing it. So now when you're talking about translating things and on the fly figuring that stuff out, now if somebody says that in Spanish, when you do it in English, you can give a better translation because there's all these nuances to it. Very interesting stuff. I would highly recommend that everybody subscribe to the Grammar Girl podcast.
The Grammar Girl. I don't even know if we want to. I might get us too far off on its hand if we start talking about grammar right now. It's interesting. It's an interesting topic, especially having little kids, and trying to figure out, Right, I've really been beating on the 5-year-old around, and beating on my 5-year-old. God, I'm going to jail. On things like, gooder's not a word, right?
Yep.
And but then you start trying to figure out where he picks up some of these ticks, and so like gooder, he made up himself. He kind of conjugated himself, so I get that one. But then I realized that other people in his life say things like "yeah" all the time instead of "yes," and it's like, no. So then you got to fix the adult in his life who says the wrong thing, and
yep.
Grammar's weird.
So I had a very similar story with my oldest. When she was trying to learn stuff, she kept saying "mines." That is mines, and I'm like, nobody says that. Nobody that I know of says that. But what I figured out was all of the possessive pronouns that we use end in S, except mine. His, hers, ours, its, theirs, mine. So she had actually, subconsciously, she obviously didn't think it through, but she had figured out that every time you use a possessive pronoun, it's got an S at the end. So it must be mine's. And so, correcting those little things. But yeah, grammar's weird, our language. Yeah.
And I'll freely admit, I still can't do who and whom. No clue. Just can't do it. I try. I've tried reading it. I want to understand the difference. I want to use whom one day in a sentence correctly.
I'd be so proud.
Can't do it.
I'm sure Grammar Girl has a podcast on it. I will find it. I'll send you a link.
All right. I've tried. I've read some of those different articles on how to do it, and whom is supposed to be used if he is the answer or something. Yeah. The hell with it. It's and those, all those things, lose and loose. I got all that, all the ones that bother you, but whom, no clue.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, and it's fun stuff. The translating bit, it's amazing that they're being able to teach software to do it.
Yeah. Well, and teaching software, right? So there's a great group of conversations here in the last month, which means the whole year. Elon Musk and those guys talking about how artificial intelligence it's coming, and the Terminator situation is going to play itself out. They're going to not need us one day. It's
yeah, I think that's a lot farther out than I'm worried about.
Yeah, I don't know. They're saying 2040 is the latest guess of when the machines will get to the singularity. Right?
Singularity. I was going to say. I was looking. I couldn't remember the word singularity is the word they use for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a who or whom? But the so then I guess it'll be how long does it take us to piss them off? But after that.
So I'll be in my 60s then, if I live that long.
Yeah. But then, maybe at that point it's all about downloading your brain. So maybe, you download your brain into the Surface Pro 3 and your body moves on and you live forever in a Surface Pro 3.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that if I do that, if I download my brain into a device, then my body will accidentally delete that backup and I will. So we have no fear of me living for eternity.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I think that's another one of those fascinating topics when you read a little bit about how they see it coming, and things like the Skype stuff is. It seems like it's just making it easier for you and me to have a conversation in Spanish, but in reality, it's more about machine learning and getting to the singularity.
Yeah. So I think we're well over an hour now. But one of the things that you wanted to talk about, well, I guess a couple of things. One of them was wearables.
Yeah, yeah, big year for wearables. I think obviously we've talked about the Fitbit ad nauseum this year, and it wasn't new this year, but I think being mainstream was new for it this year. The Microsoft Band, all the watches, the threat that Apple might release an iWatch. It's interesting. The world has seemed to accept that they can have a device that will just tell them how they do every day.
Yeah, it's so when I got my 830, the good one, not the one that works in Algeria, but when I got the one at AT&T, it came with a Fitbit. It came with a Fitbit Flex or Zip or Nod or Buck or something. I forget which one it was. It's a little wrist one that's got the
It's the
dots on it.
Flex.
Flex. Um, I'll never use it, but I'll probably give it away. I'll probably do that next year, give it away in the Netcast here or something. But yeah, I had lunch with a buddy of mine today. He has a band. He was raving about how much he loves it. And Mark Rackley likes it.
I don't know. Yeah, Rackley left when we were cracking on him, and then came back. But I don't know why. I don't know why they decided to give out with the 830 the Fitbit Flex. I couldn't understand because the Fitbit or the 830 does the step tracking anyway. Didn't follow that one.
I didn't either, but it was there. And I don't know what I'm gonna do with it because it's just got the dots on it. So the Fitbit that I've got now, the Fitbit One, has the time and all that. I mean, it's got everything on it. So yeah.
Yeah,
But
and that's
but I agree with you. Wearables were not new this year, but them being feasible, acceptable was new this year.
yeah. It's I don't know. And I don't know. I don't know where they go. I mean, will the iWatch, kind of change the game again, or will it just be, how long will they continue to just be an extension of your phone before they actually become the whole phone, right, if you will, and the phone goes away again?
Yeah, I don't know. I know I would like to have a smartwatch or of some sort, though I've got a Windows phone, so I can't get any of the cool Android ones, which I do kind of feel bad about. But I would like to have something that does those kind of things, so I don't have to get my phone out all the time. And I mean, I look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, and I've had this conversation with a few different people. I mean, I fully accept that my children aren't going to have cell phones. Right, when they get to be teenagers, there'll be something new. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a smartwatch. Maybe it's a microchip implanted in your head. I don't know, but it's just weird sitting here understanding that our lifeblood, right? I mean, we live and die by our cell phones today. That lifeblood is going to change again, and I don't know
Yeah.
where it's going.
I don't know, well, and everything changes. So yeah, that's absolutely going to happen. I remember the first time I ever really used a cell phone much was in '94, and that was I did a thing. I worked for the University Police Department. We had a thing, and they gave us all cell phones, mobile phones, and I think it was the bag phones at the time. And I remember thinking I could really get used to this. I can think of a whole bunch of ways to use this. That was just 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that phone weighed, what, 15 pounds? I mean,
It was you could kill a man with it pretty easily. Of course, I could do that with my Nokia 920 also. That's a good feed. Um,
What other topics did we have that we missed?
Well, we want to talk a little bit about the cloud. Also, cloud kind of came of age in 2014.
Yeah, and I think we kind of hit on that earlier. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. The cloud clearly not new in 2014, but man, it just keeps barreling down that highway faster and faster and faster. Office 365, right? That was this bunch of SharePoint nerds. That's always been our big fear, and I don't think anyone's escaping it at this point. It is coming like a ton of bricks, and as we pointed out, our phones are just magically in the cloud, and our wearable devices are magically in the cloud, and your music comes from the cloud. Even Todd Klint's music can come from the cloud. It is omnipotent.
Yeah, and speaking of phones,
Oh, hello, phone. Tell them I'm not here.
that's my parents.
Uh-oh.
Um, yeah, and I think the cloud. So one of the changes this year that I attribute the cloud being taken seriously was Microsoft. I feel like they changed their story on the cloud a little bit. Before now, I felt like Microsoft's story was everything's moving to the cloud. You folks with servers in your premises are just going to feel like fools. Everything's going to the cloud. And then I feel like this year they kind of took a step back and went, not everything makes sense in the cloud. And they started hitting the hybrid story a little better this year. And I think that's the thing that really made the cloud pop, was people, they weren't faced with this all or nothing decision anymore. Now it was, okay, which pieces make sense in the cloud? And I think that's how they're going to get their foothold.
Yeah, well, I think that's the whole key, right? Is you get someone in the cloud with just a little this, a little that, and I think it just becomes a very natural transition. And as the chat room is chiming in, right? Hybrid is huge. I think it'll continue to be huge. That's the whole product that I just launched, right? Was the private cloud stuff, because it allows you to do hybrid. Your data centers, our data centers in the cloud, and that story, everyone's like, I get it. I want to be able to move in pieces and move, dabble my toe, and the hybrid story lets you dabble your toe.
Yeah, and one thing that Microsoft has done a great job of is they've made the cloud better. Obviously, they're going to keep making it better. But once you get the hybrid story started and you get people get their toe in there, then as that new functionality comes in, it's less of a thing to move that little piece over. So you start doing some SharePoint, and then you decide, hey, that link thing is kind of better, and you're just moving little pieces over. And that's, I think that's the thing. I feel like, you and I had a very anti-cloud stance previous to our connection with Rackspace. But being at Rackspace and the things that have changed in the 3 years since then, it's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so the interesting thing that hopefully maybe we'll see in 2015, but I doubt it, it'll probably be a couple more years out, is when one of the interesting things with the cloud, more specifically like public clouds, infrastructure as a service and storage and things like that, right? The prices just keep coming down and down and down and down, and at some point you got to figure, either they're going to start paying us to use them, or
all four,
or they're going to stabilize and start pushing the prices back up. I think that'll be an interesting pivot point in the cloud's life, whenever it either hits rock bottom of pricing, or they start to have to take the price back up because it's gotten too cheap.
Yeah, I'm curious where that is, because part of the reason they're able to drop the price is because they're getting better at automation, processes, and at some point, that's going to level off. They're going to get all the low-hanging fruit, and it's going to be, the incremental stuff. So when you talk about gas prices and oil prices, one of the big things people talk about is peak oil. At what point can you pull oil out of the ground, for the cheapest amount, and everything after that it starts getting tougher and all that. I wonder where we're going to hit peak automation. Where those the gains start getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Well, and Jonathan and I think we talked about it when he was on the show with me this year, right? We talked about that in some ways they are paying you to use the cloud. For example, if you have a Bing search account, you get rewards for using that, and so I don't know. I think that'll be something to look for in 2015. How does it keep diving? Does it level? Where do we end up with this pricing?
Yep, and I feel like at Rackspace we've got ourselves pointed in the right direction for that. We've got a little bit of everything, and it's a good place to be.
Yeah,
I agree. I think the last thing we wanted to talk about was the big conference that they announced here in 2014.
Oh yeah, well yeah. So that would be 2014 in review. Is that they got rid of conferences and we just have one to go to now.
Yeah. So in 2015, it's just going to be Ignite, and that's going to be it for Microsoft conferences.
I'm still wondering. I mean, because both of us were at Tech at its heyday when there was 14,000 people or whatever, and that was pretty big and pretty crazy. So what happens? Is there going to be 30 or 40,000 people at this thing? And
well, I think so I was at that planning thing that they did a couple of months ago. The number they kept throwing around was 20,000.
Okay.
Which is less than your 30 or 40,000, but still a ridiculous amount of people.
Yeah, I don't know. Because when you go to Tech Ed, right? I mean, I've been to every Tech Ed since, I don't know, 07, 08, somewhere in there. Spoke at all of them since 08, I think. And, with the thousands and thousands of people, it was very easy for different content to get lost. The SharePoint tracks and the this track, and whatever was the buzzword of the day was kind of what took over the expo hall floor. And it'd be interesting to see how do they really find a way to give the right amount of love to all the products, or if Azure is really the big push of the show, is it really just going to feel like the Azure show with some random SharePoint and Microsoft Office sessions here and there? And that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I know at the planning session, they talked about how it's going to be one big conference, but there are going to be sections like on the expo floor. There's going to be like the SharePoint section, the Exchange section, the Link section. For some folks of some products, there is no differentiation. There's just some products that don't lend themselves well to that. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I think so. I was talking at lunch with my friend Jeff, and he and I were talking about this, and I don't completely buy their reasoning for wanting to do one conference. The idea that SharePoint guys don't just do SharePoint now. They touch some Link, they touch some Exchange. So having it all in one place is good. I don't completely buy it, but I'm willing to see. I'm willing to do the experiment. But one of the things that I told him was, I think the first one's going to be really rough, and because it's just a different way of doing things. So I think the real judge will not be how this one goes. The real judge will be what they learned from this one and how the next one is. I think that's really.
And see, so I kind of look, and it's probably just my lack of being very smart, right? But I just feel like this Ignite is just tech ed with a little more stuff added to it, right? I mean, tech ed was kind of the whole portfolio to begin with.
Yeah.
So I guess in my head, I'm having a hard time what the difference is going to be like from an Ignite to tech ed, or from tech ed to Ignite. It seemed like the same show to me, but without the promise of any of the other shows to get more content.
Yeah, and that's something that they fight, because a lot of people feel that way. But you and I have felt this. Hopefully, what one of the differences will be is whatever like you said, whatever the hot thing is, that's what tech ed would do. And tech ed, I don't know if it's officially this, but it always felt like a marketing event. So if Microsoft felt like they wanted to push Azure, there might be 80% Azure sessions and like 4 SharePoint sessions, because it was between releases of SharePoint, and SharePoint was doing well. It didn't really need the marketing push. So I think part of the goal of Ignite will be guaranteed content for everything. Hopefully.
Yeah, like you said, it'll be interesting to see how they pull it off, or how bad this one is. Not bad, how rough, how many places for improvement there are.
Yes, that's true. Well, we have gone way over. My clock's like an hour 15, an hour 16. Maybe the longest Netcast I've ever done.
Woo-woo.
And I think, so I checked, I think this is like 45 this year that I've done. So out of 52-ish, I don't remember how the days fell out.
Is that kind of like the 5 or 10 I did?
That's counting all of them, yeah. That's so I've got every time I get one done, I drag it into the 2014 folder, and there was like 44, 45 folders in there. So it's been a good year. I think bringing the Google stuff, I think has helped. I'm able to bring in Yahoos like you. Got some plans for next year for bringing folks in. It's been pretty good. So I'm thinking about, and then I haven't talked out loud to this to anybody, but I'm thinking about dropping the word Netcast and going to podcast. What's your thoughts on that?
Netcast isn't a word, so I've always wondered what the hell it meant.
Yeah, and I've had this rolling around in the back of my head for a while. When you and Justin were talking about the Google Explorer stuff, how much people search for things. Nobody knows what the hell Netcast is. For every once that somebody searches for that, 100 people, 1,000 people search for podcast. And what's really punctuated is that my show doesn't show up on Windows Phone in the podcasts, because they populate that list with some weird Bing query that I can't seem to game to get my podcast to show up. So you can't find it. You got to put the URL in, which is a gigantic pain.
Well, so let me ask you this, since you're talking about this. Snoopy, yay!
We have the official mascot.
If you're going to change, if you're going to go from Netcast to podcast, are you going to change the name as well to get away from the Todd SharePoint podcast to the Todd Technology podcast? Ooh, put on the spot.
Well, and obviously, so people who've been listening to the show know that I've been talking about doing that for a year now. I see some pluses and minuses to it. So there's a lot of non-SharePoint content on here now, and I think that's generally a good thing. People have been pretty good about that. They seem to like it. But again, coming down to like search and SEO, having SharePoint in the title probably helps me some for searches. Having my name in it helps a little bit. So I don't know. And I think Oh, geez. Cat was standing on the keyboard. um, Part of it is I've never found another name that really grabbed me. So I think if I found another name that I really liked, regardless of whether it had SharePoint in the name or Todd in the name or whatever, I'd probably just go with it.
I guess that would be the question. Someone new, and I guess the people that are listening, you can chime in. When you search, if you found this by SharePoint Netcast or listen to the Todd show, oh, um, were you disappointed that there was other stuff in here? There was other content. Does that turn new listeners off? I mean, obviously the audience that's grown with you is kind of adapted pretty well, I think. My random business stuff they want to talk about and things like that. But to the new person coming in looking for just a SharePoint Netcast, do they listen once and go, the hell, that guy talked about SharePoint for 2 minutes?
Yeah, that's a good question. And another thing, I had lunch with some buddies of mine a couple of weeks ago, guys here in town that do various stuff, and one of them was asking me if I did transcription for my podcast, and I said, no, there's absolutely no value to transcription. And he said, yeah, I think there is. And he said, have you ever gone to MSN or whatever and seen a story that you thought was interesting and clicked it and found out that it was a video? And I'm like, yeah, I hate that because I never. And he's like, that's why you need transcription. And so to your point, that gives people who, if they just want the SharePoint stuff, they can find it in the transcript potentially and jump to that spot and only listen to the pieces that they need. Yeah, I went into that conversation thinking that there was absolutely no value to having transcripts at all, and I left it thinking that I was an idiot for not having transcripts after we talked it out a little bit. And I know AC and CJ for their cloud show, they have transcripts and all that.
Yeah.
So I need to talk to them a little bit and see. Yeah, I'm toying with that idea too, so that people don't have to listen to the crap they don't want to listen to. And that's part of the reason. Like if you get this on YouTube, every section has a time signature, and you can click that, and it will take you to that topic. And so then people don't have to listen to the crap they don't want.
Most of the dribble that we do.
Yeah.
All right, it's been way too long. You should wrap this puppy up.
That's right. You got to go. So thanks everybody. It's been a great year. Thanks to Shane for pitching in a couple times when I was gone. As always, if you have any suggestions, Netcast versus podcast versus Catcast was also suggested. Hit me up at Todd Klindt on Twitter, todd.klindt@rackspace.com. Love to hear about it. I want to make this better, so I want to hear about it. So Shane, bid everybody adieu, and I'll see you next year.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun.
All right, everybody. Thanks, and have a happy New Year. Bye.